record on. Perfect. All right. Hi, Sal. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm well.
Good. So thank you for joining me today on this interview. It's the first interview of the Mad32 Brewing Company interview series. So it's going to be real nice, and I feel like you were the perfect person to start this off with. So the first question that I want to go into is just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, just who is Sal?
All right. So I am Sal Mortillaro. I come from Mandeville, Louisiana, which is basically outside of New Orleans, about 30 minutes. Why am I on Mad32 Brewing? I am a grandmaster ranked beer judge with the beer judge certification program, or the BJCP is what it's called. The BJCP has been around since about 1985. It is the gold standard, if you will, for judging beer competitions, both homebrew and major competitions. Kind of the purpose of the BJCP is to encourage knowledge, understanding, and appreciation of beer, as well as promote, recognize, and advance beer, mead, and cider tasting, evaluation, and how to communicate those things, as well as to kind of develop a set of tools, criteria of standards of beer judging, if you will. I've been involved in the program with the BJCP for about 9 years now. And I have been homebrewing for about 10 years now.
All right. Yeah, I feel like that's pretty cool. Like I just started homebrewing like about 2 months ago, so I have a lot of questions to ask you about homebrewing that we'll get into a little bit later. So I'll say, we've kind of gone into like your relationship with beer, kind of your beer story. We started off homebrewing, and then you've done this whole grandmaster stuff, and you've expanded also just from not just beer, but to mead and barley wines, you were saying. So one question that, like, for me personally, like I remember my first beer like experience ever, and I don't remember the age, but I remember I was still really young, and my dad and our cousin was originally living in San Francisco at the time, and drove down to LA where I'm from, and he brought home some, oh no, it was in 2007, and he brought home some 2007, actually it wasn't 2007, it was 2010 probably, and he brought home some Anchor Brewing Company winter ales and the Magnum bottle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember them putting it in like an ice bath to keep it cold while they were drinking, and they left the room. And when they left the room, I picked up the bottle and took a little swig of, I'm a little 10-year-old. It's probably bad that I'm talking about this, that I was 10 swigging a beer, and whatever, it's fine. And I remember that was my first.
We're all friends here, to be all right.
Yeah, we're all good. And I remember that was like that's like my first real remembrance of, like memory of drinking beer. And honestly, I liked it. So basically the question for you is, do you have, like, what's your earliest memory of beer? Like, what's your first memory of beer that you can remember?
So, you know, what's interesting, I actually have a picture of me in one of those little baby walkers. And my grandpa's giving me a sip out of a Heineken bottle, and I'm grabbing up and just drinking this beer, and just really just enjoying the hell out of it, apparently. That was my my first photographic memory, if you will, first picture of me enjoying beer. But really, I remember growing up as a kid, my dad would take us out to eat at various restaurants, and we would, you know, I'd take some of his beer here and there, and really kind of had a enjoyment and appreciation for beer at that point. Where I really started first getting into beer is when I went to college at Southeastern Louisiana University in Hammond. We had a craft beer store, and of course this was in 2001, you know, have to be legal to drink. I went to a store called the Red, White, and Brew. And the Red, White, and Brew had the 100 Beers in a 100 Day club. They had couple of hundred worth of various craft brews or brews from all over the world. And that's really where I got into my true appreciation for beer. So that's kind of how I got into it, and my first memories of beer.
I always feel like it's always like a grandpa or a dad that always kind of like
Yeah.
sees it when you're too young, and it's also crazy because I feel like a lot of them do it to make us know that we're gonna hate it, and then we spit it out. But
There's
then
some of us, there's some of us who, it becomes a professional hobby or, an actual job. So, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna be honest, like I will say, as much as I'm a college senior, I do have a more expensive taste for beer,
Right.
and I kind of been pissed at my dad for doing that because my dad was a Sierra Nevada pale ale drinker when I was
Oh,
growing up, and the only beer that we ever had in the fridge were Sierra Nevada pale ales. It wasn't like some other people who had like Budweisers or Bud Lights, and
right.
and of course, as a kid, where do you steal your parents' alcohol? Of course.
Yeah.
And of course, what I grew up stealing, as much as I stole, I'm not saying anything that crazy, but was pale ales, and it kind of built my taste buds to like this. So I kind of, Dad, I'm pissed at you a little bit. You make me spend a lot more money on beer now because of that. So
a kind of a funny story, piggybacking off of that is I've been told before that I look relatively young for my age, and they're like, we're not going to card you because no sane, underage kid would spend this much money on beer. Clearly, you're good to go. So you kind of have to laugh. That's happened to me once or twice. You go rack up $100+ in beer at the local bottle shop, and they're like, all right, hey, whatever. But of course now, they all know who I am. So, but yeah.
yeah, no, it's like, yeah, that's something that that's what I've kind of realized, where it's like the whole thing when you're like it's bad that we're talking about under.
Sure. No, yeah.
But that's how everyone somewhat starts. It's just like, if
Drink
you're a
that's
kid and
real.
you go like, oh, I like, what's your local on tap? Like, or what's this? I feel like they always kind of like, this kid knows what he's doing. He has to be.
Yeah.
But so the next thing that I kind of want to transfer into, and is something that I've recently, within the past couple of weeks or past 2 months, I've like really fallen in love with, has been homebrewing. And like you said before, you've been homebrewing for since 2010. So I'm personally right now, I'm only doing 5-gallon brew in a bag methods right now. I'm bringing up all my brew supplies up to school. People have already been asking me for like, make me a birthday beer when we're up there type of things. But though, since I've only brewed 4 beers, so I'm not very good. What I've seen is that you are actually an award-winning home brewer. And what I wanted to ask you is, for all the awards that you've won for creating your own beer, can you talk about like the one award that was the closest to your heart, or like one that meant the most, and what beer won you that award, as well as what has been your favorite beer you've ever brewed?
Oh, wow. Okay, so probably the one that's closest to my heart is a local competition. Um, the fast story is that our home brew club, the Mystic Crew Brew, basically out of Covington, Louisiana, puts on a homebrew festival. And it's called Larry Hartzog's Twisted Homebrew Competition and Beer Festival. We had a member who had passed away about 9 years ago. Larry was known for brewing a lot of weird and wild and wacky things. He was kind of the weirdo of the club. When I first started homebrewing, and I still do love to brew all kinds of weird shit. So I kind of fell under his wing. He passed away unexpectedly, and he ended up passing away. So we started this homebrew, this festival in honor of him, Larry Hartzog's Twisted Homebrew Competition and Beer Festival. It's a fundraiser that actually raises money for the local humane society. This past year, we raised right at about $35,000 for them. Well, backtrack a few years ago, I brewed a really weird, two weird beers that year. One was a banana nut bread beer, which tasted exactly like banana nut bread, and I was super pleased with that. That ended up winning second place in the judge competition, and I brewed a pretzel and mustard goza that took first place in the People's Choice. Goza being a slightly salty style, and so the pretzel mustard, it all kind of played together, made it kind of bready to emulate that pretzel. Added the mustard, and then of course the goza, the base goza itself
I have a
was
quick
so.
I
Yeah.
have a quick question for you. When it comes to the pretzel, did you use pretzels in your grain bill?
I did. I did actually add unsalted pretzel because you wanted to control that salinity. I added unsalted pretzel to it, and then also really used some particular specialty grains to go for that really bready malt character. So I tried to up that a little bit, but yeah, there were actual pretzels in it as well.
That's yeah.
That was probably so ended up, yeah. So that was probably kind of my favorite, just because I like one of the things I really enjoy, especially brewing weird things, is I like to change people's perspective on what beer is. Believe me, don't get me wrong. Traditional beers, I absolutely love traditional beers. I love brewing them. I love drinking them. But to see somebody smile and be like, "Oh yeah, pretzel and mustard in a beer," that's really cool. That's really cool to see. So it's fun. It's fun in that sense. That was probably my favorite one to win.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that there's a beer now that you consider like the Sal beer, like you're known for making this one homebrew, or is it still kind of just have you like never made the same homebrew twice now type of thing, or
So there is one. Actually, there is one. I ended up winning a second place at the national homebrew competition with it. It was a bourbon barrel aged imperial milk stout with vanilla. And big beer. A lot of folks really like when I make that, just because it's pretty tasty. I'm not going to lie, it's pretty tasty, and it's super fun.
do you actually use a bourbon barrel
I
to?
do. I use and I've changed it out every couple of years. Basically, a 5 gallon old Balcones barrel, Balcones bourbon or whiskey distilling out of Texas, and I'll usually dump it, sanitize it, refresh it with just some mediocre bourbon, just keep the wood wet and keep that bourbon flavor. But yes, there is an actual bourbon barrel involved.
So I have a quick question because I've been learning so much about different beers, especially home brewing, and from everything that I've been reading, is like the number one thing about home brewing is like 10% is actually brewing and like 90% of it is sanitation.
That is not home brewing. That is also professional brewing.
That is also
Well,
professional.
let's back it up. I'm sorry, sanitization. The joke with professional, yeah, because that comes into cleaning, but that's true. You really have to keep things clean, tip top. Really have to sanitize the hell out of everything. That's 100% accurate. That is the tongue in cheek joke that holds truth. Brewing is 90% brewing. 90% cleaning and 10% brewing.
So my question is, and it's something that because I'm trying to expand my my home brewing beer making as well. I can only do ales right now because I have to make myself a fermentation chamber. But I was thinking about, oh, why not do like a red wine barrel porter or whatever. But I understand when you're doing like a glass carboy, you can use Star San or whatever and sanitize it. But when you're using a bourbon barrel, you can't because the wood is porous. There's
Sure.
going to be wild yeast in it, correct? Or
Well,
it's
so there are different ways that you can use to sanitize that barrel. Potassium bisulfate is one of them, but really that's where the bourbon barrels kind of shine, or tequila barrels, or any of those high alcohol barrels. Uh, those higher alcohols will generally kill any yeast bacteria, anything like that. Uh, it's as opposed to like a wine barrel. You're only coming in at 14%, average for wine.
Yeah.
You start dumping a 40%, 40% alcohol spirit in there. That tends to kind of help keep things a little sanitary in and of itself.
So then are you basically using the barrel then as like a secondary fermenter and you
Uh,
type of thing?
yes, not to nuance your terminology. It's not really a secondary fermentation that takes place in the barrel. It's more of a rest. It's more of a rest inside of the barrel. But you can consider it a secondary vessel. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm guessing. I mean, I'd also love to go in after this to go into like what your homebrew setup is compared to like a beginner's homebrew setup. But I'm sure you probably use a conical fermenter at the moment.
It depends. I do have a conical fermenter, but really the vast majority are just still plastic, proper homebrew plastic buckets or
Really,
glass carboys. Yeah.
really.
Yep.
Everyone's been saying like I've been seeing a lot of people who are really into homebrewing using plastic buckets, but then I'm also seeing a lot of people say that plastic buckets are not the greatest thing to use. It because like they can get scratched and then you have like
Uh, yes. Yeah. Just be sure to keep them clean. Be sure to, maybe every brewing year, if you will, just go ahead and switch them out, and you're really not going to have any problems with it.
I feel like also the main reason why people like using the carboys or some sort of plastic see-through is it's fun to watch like
Oh, it's
amazing
magic.
fermentation. It's fun to
Absolutely.
watch everything go crazy.
It's still, I'm pushing 10 years, and it still boggles my mind. It's still magic whenever I see it all just, percolating there. I'm like, that's so cool.
Like was when you first homebrewed, was it kind of like a aha moment, basically being like, all right, I'm falling in love with this, or was it kind of something like you did it once and then you were like, and then you did it again and it kind of grew? Like, how did it become
No,
this?
I loved it. Actually, the first homebrew style that I did was more or less a doppelbock, minus the lager because I didn't have a way to. It was a doppelbock ale that we just kept relatively cool. But no, I loved it. I loved getting into it, and I just thought it was fantastic, and it really went downhill from there for me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was it. I'm guessing was it a extract with specialty grain beer that.
It was, yep, yep, yep.
How
It was
long until you were like, screw that, and I'm going all grain?
pretty much. All right, so I kind of pretty much kicked bottling to the curb within the first few times because cleaning them and scrubbing them and that's just that's a lot of work. You'll find that out. You'll call that quits pretty soon. I think for my first 2 years. Yeah, that's about right. For my first 2 years, I did all grain and some specialty grains in there. I'm sorry, I did the extract with some specialty grains before I moved into all grain. So about 2 years, I was on the extract kick. Yeah.
So because for me, like I did the one extract with specialty grain, and then I was kind of like, this is from all the videos I was watching and reading. It like it wasn't what I kept on watching. So it was going from one time doing an extract with specialty grain to an all grain brew in a bag. Is that kind of like a weird jump that most people don't do?
You know, no, yet sort of. It was kind of intimidating. A little intimidating. I'm not going to lie. The first time I did all grain, I thought it was pretty intimidating. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to mess this up. There's so much that could go wrong. But it wasn't as hard as it seemed. I mean, you're pretty much literally uh, making tea is when it comes down to it, right?
Yeah.
You're taking hot water and you're adding some grains and just letting it soak and you know draining it, pouring the sparge water over it, getting the sugar boiling, and that's it. It's really all grain is not that hard, and it's really super easy to get into, and you have a lot more control and variety than your extract brewing.
Yeah. So one thing that I just was kind of thinking about is you said that you did your first home brew in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
but only 2 years later, in 2012, you became the 74th ever, what was it in 2012 that you became the 74th ever BJCP grandmaster taster? Is that
No, so
okay?
I got into home brewing about 10 years ago, and I got into the BJCP about a year later. So basically, uh, loving beer got into home brewing. Home brewing got into competitions. Competitions got into judging, and then judging just went on from there. I picked up grandmaster. So 2 years ago now.
Okay.
So in 19, again, the BJCP, for those watching and not familiar, been around since '85. It's kind of the gold standard. Since '85, there's been about 15,000 people worldwide to take the exam, and then I became the 74th grandmaster 2 years ago.
How many people have taken it? How many people have passed? Or
Um,
grandmaster?
so it's a matter of taking it and passing. How many? I don't know that number.
You
How
don't
many?
know how many grandmasters there are in total.
There's 74 of us.
Oh, so you have been the last person to successfully become
I
a
believe
grandmaster.
there's one or two that have gone on since me, but it's not many of us. There's less than a hundred of us out of the 8,000, more or less 8,000. Out of currently 8,000 active judges, there's I don't know how many of us are still active. I'd say there's probably about because people have either passed away or I'd say there's about 65 of us active out of 8,000 or so. That's about right.
So, and I'd love for you to go into more depth about this because, I mean, I feel like anybody who's kind of done like a Netflix dive watching, they've all end up watching that movie Psalm, which is
Yeah,
about like, the
it's
one.
great.
Yeah.
It's a good flick.
Oh, it's fantastic. So, and that movie really shows what what wine sommeliers, or I don't know if I'm actually pronouncing it correctly,
Yeah, you are.
have to do to get to that tasting. And I know a judger and a sommelier is different, but I also know you're part of the sommelier foundation, or I think so. Yeah, the association. But we'll go into that later because I actually have something really funny to ask you.
Yeah.
What I wanted to know is like what are the steps, or like what do you have to do to become a grandmaster, um, and to become certified, and was it worth it? And then also, now that you are a grandmaster, what's your like responsibilities?
Sure. All right. So, how do you become a BJCP judge? There are, for those who are watching, your best place to start is seek out a local homebrew club. Your local homebrew club, wherever that may be in the internet land out there, they can point you in the direction of they're going to know who the local judges are, but you basically generally start with a study group. There's several of them outside of COVID. There's several of them being ran at once, throughout wherever in the world. The study group usually lasts approximately a year. You go over various beer styles, how to judge the brewing process, off flavors, off aromas, all of that kind of thing. When you're ready to take the exam, they actually just recently changed the exam format a few years ago. Right now, with the BJCP, the entrance exam consists of a 200 question exam that I believe you have. I forget the time frame, but it's technically could be open book, but it's so fast and furious that there's no way that you can look up everything. You pretty much have to know about 80% of what they're throwing at you in regards to beer styles and beer history, beer knowledge, some other stuff. So when you pass the online exam, that gives you the opportunity to sit for the tasting exam. BJCP tasting exam is essentially set up as, for all intents and purposes, a competition. You have an hour and 30 minutes. So basically, it's approximately 15 minutes of beer. They bring out 6 beers. The beers that they bring out could, let's just say, a sweet stout. So there's a couple of options that it could go. They could present you this beer, and it really is a sweet stout, or it's really a dry Irish stout. Or it's a sweet stout that has something wrong with it, off flavor, off aroma, or it could be a dry stout with off flavor, off aroma. So you have to, they'll present you a beer. You have to basically judge it as it's presented based on what they tell you it is. So you have to know enough about that particular style, style's appearance, flavor, aroma, mouthfeel, and overall impressions to be able to judge that beer. If it's true to style, you're good to go. If it's not true to style, you have to give feedback on why it's not to style and how to correct to bring it back into style. So whether it's a recipe issue or a technical issue, or if it's an off flavor, off aroma, you have to know what caused that off flavor, off aroma, how to prevent that, and that kind of thing. So depending on how well you do on the tasting exam, there's several levels of BJCP judge. There's basically a novice judge or a provisional judge, somebody who's brand new. There is an apprentice judge. Then it goes to a certified judge. From there, it goes to national ranked judge, then a master judge, a grandmaster judge. So depending on how well you do on the tasting exam, the next exam is a written exam. Depending on how well you do on the tasting exam, you have to score at least an 80% to be able to sit for the written exam. You have to score an 80, plus you have to have certain judging points, some other things under your belt. You have to be judging for a little while, have an 80 on the tasting, and then you can sit on for the written exam. The written exam is pretty much a free-for-all, without getting overly detailed and boring and going on for like the next 10 minutes about this. The written exam is pretty much a free-for-all. On the main questions is they will give you two sets of 3 beers each. For example, describe the aroma, appearance, flavor, and mouthfeel of a Bock, Eisbock, and Doppelbock. Provide classic examples of the style. So you have to basically, from memory, pretty much hit and describe aroma, flavor, appearance, mouthfeel, overall impressions of these styles. And this could be any of the 75 or so styles presented. So you pretty much have to know the style guidelines back and forth. Also, there's a brewing question or a recipe formulation question. They will give you a particular beer style where you must list the ingredients: traditional malts, traditional hops, traditional yeast. You have to provide target gravities, final gravities, color, IBUs, all your various, little data points. And then there, of course, there's some technical questions where they'll ask you anything and everything about brewing water or malting or mashing. So it's 2 hours long, the written exam. And you're pretty much writing fast and furious and regurgitating anything and everything about beer at this point. Depending on how well you do on that exam, that can rank you up to the higher ranks, which is going to be a national or a master or grandmaster judge. Your combined scores of your tasting and your written average out, and that gives you either the master, the national, or the master ranks.
Oh,
That's Emma, sweet girl. That's my sweet girl right there.
yeah, like that sounds just listening to all that information is already making my head hurt right now, which is that's like, and what it took you, what, 4 years to get to that point,
It did. Of really applying myself, I dedicated I dedicated a lot of time to drinking and studying and reading in order to get where I'm at now. So it's still pretty surreal in all honesty.
like this is I wrote a tweet about this yesterday on my brew company's Twitter account,
Uh-huh.
and it went basically, I'm starting to like beer, but how do you stay fit and like beer? Like, I don't understand how it works. Like,
Me personally, I drink my calories. I don't eat them.
that's what I've kind of been learning or kind of shifting to doing, because I know it's like that's just been like my one big thing right now, where it's like, I'm loving beer, but if I start really liking it a lot, like, I'm gonna have to start getting a personal trainer or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to do a lot of running, drink a lot of water, and don't eat a lot of carbs. Drink
Yeah.
them all.
So going off of that, what are the perks or what you once you become a grandmaster? What are your responsibilities? But also, like, are there perks being grandmaster? Can you walk into a bar and basically be like, I'm a grandmaster, and then they start giving you?
So, perks. So what's been really cool? Yeah, it's been actually kind of cool. There are definitely some perks to it. I write for a beer magazine called the Beer Connoisseur Magazine,
Mhm.
where I do blind reviews for major breweries, and I assign those beer scores. So it's really cool because I get beer shipped to my handler, if you will, because I'm not supposed to know what the beer is until after I'm done. But I get beer sent to me from all across the United States, for free. And beers that, distribution laws, you can't get everything everywhere. But I get beers that I would never have. I might get a beer from like some far-reaching corner of Wisconsin that I would never be able to drink. So Beer Connoisseur has been really awesome to do that. Once I became a Grandmaster Judge, even when I hit national, I was invited to come judge at the Great American Beer Festival, which was really awesome, really surreal. Got to sit at the table with a lot of cool folks. I was really starstruck, and still am. Like the first year I judged, I was judging American Wild Ales, and it's kind of a round table, and I'm two folks over from Tom Author of Lost Abbey. He looks at me and goes, "So Sal, what do you think about this sour?" And I'm like, "Sir, wait, what? You're the guy that it's freaking has one of the best, arguably, Lost Abbey, most well-known, one of them in the whole U.S. sour breweries, and you're asking me what I think? That's pretty freaking cool." I've gotten to travel to Costa Rica to go, all expenses paid, to go proctor an exam, BJCP exam. BJCP picked up the flight, and the Costa Rican Craft Brewers Association picked up the hotel and the food and all of that stuff. Been to Montana, all expenses paid. Alabama, all expenses paid. A couple other places. It's been really cool. It's been pretty wild. I definitely get the invites to all the cool parties. Most of the local beer brewers folks know who I am, and they'll invite me out to stuff, and it's cool. I've gotten a lot of brewery shirts for free. I don't think I've paid for a brewery shirt in like the last several years.
That's
I definitely there's a local brewery, a couple local breweries, one that I kind of do some consulting work with, if you will, and two of them actually, and they really value my thoughts. So it's pretty neat. It definitely has its perks.
are there so we've gone through the perks, but like, what are there once you become a grandmaster? Could you just all of a sudden become a grandmaster and then say, "Oh, I don't want to do any more tasting"? Or is it kind of like once you become a grandmaster, you have responsibilities that you have to do?
So you are with the BJCP, as one of the things that gets you, so to move from master to grandmaster judge, you are considered a mentor of the program. You are considered somebody who helps bring other judges into the ranks and kind of fosters and gives them knowledge. So as a grandmaster, we are exam graders. I grade other people's tasting exams. I grade other people's written exams and kind of evaluate them as judges. And also, I am that's an exam proctor. Also, I give exams. I host exams. I'm an exam admin. I will host actual tasting exams, run written exams. Usually the grandmaster judges also are going to be fill various roles, such as right now I am the BJCP Southern Region Assistant Rep. So pretty much if anybody has any problems in the Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi region, they come to me and kind of I help them out and do what I can to assist them however they need it.
All right. Well, the one funny thing I was thinking about, because it seems like being a grandmaster beer judge, and also for you being part of you're a member of the Guild of Beer Sommeliers, and being kind of a beer grandmaster and being a wine sommelier kind of sounds very similar, and being part of the Guild of Beer Sommeliers. Is there kind of a competition between like a beer sommelier and a wine sommelier, basically being like, or like a sort of prestige? Like, do you guys have competitions, or like, I have the better palate? No, I have the better palate. Like, is there any
not really. There's really not. I don't see a lot of the wine guys. The bar that I occasionally bartend at, Grateful Ape in Mandeville, he is a certified sommelier. And so he's got a pretty good palate, pretty good nose. But it's nice to just sit down with somebody and, I like other forms of drink because it's kind of a break, right? There's a point where you get beered out. So not saying I don't love beer, but it's kind of, you kind of hit that you're always learning, but you kind of hit that peak, that plateau of knowledge, and you're just kind of like, all right, let's get into something else. So it's really cool to actually talk to wine guys, cocktail guys, spirit guys, and just kind of learn from them. And I think they appreciate it because they're like, all right, this guy's got a good palate, a good nose. He gets it. He's easy to talk to. He understands concepts like that. So it definitely helps out a little bit talking to those guys.
So like, have you always had a pretty good palate, or like you've always been able to know, like, this is what oak tastes like, this is what a burnt orange rind tastes like, or have you kind of just built that up over the years?
So you definitely have to start with a base. With that being said, for those out there who believe that they can't do this, like, oh, my nose isn't that great, my palate isn't that great, that's not true. It is a learned skill. It is a learned vocabulary. It is something that you learn what to look for, what sticks out. In fact, I was telling my buddy to piggyback off this question, the last question. I was telling my buddy that I work for, the certified sommelier. I said, I want you to bring out a bunch of bad wines because I want to taste them. So you really just need to kind of go out and seek out these things and learn these things. Sticking to beer, let's talk about beer. The best thing that you can do if you're out there and you want to learn tasting, and if you want to learn how to pick up on flavors, go on your Google store, go on your Apple store, and download the BJCP app. Again, Beer Judge Certification Program, BJCP. There is a app that has the guidelines of all the styles out there. And one of the best things that you can do is that if you're sitting there drinking a pale ale, pull up the guidelines, read about the aroma, appearance, flavor, mouthfeel, overall impressions. See if you can pick up on those things they're talking about. And it may click in your head, and say, hey, oh, that's what I'm tasting. I just never knew how to describe it. So it is very much um, a learned skill to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's just it's because I keep on trying new beers, and it's like, oh, I like this, but I don't know. Like I tried this. I've been trying a lot of saisons lately, just because I never knew what a saison was until about 3 weeks ago. So I've been like experimenting because it's like there's so many different beers out there that I want to try, see what I like, what I don't like. And I tried this one saison that was like a sake inspired saison, which used sake rice within its grain bill. But
Mm-hmm.
then I tried a saison DuPont, and
Oh
they
yeah,
tasted completely different. And
sure,
I talked to the bottle shop guy, and he was like, "Yeah, like the rice one was not supposed is not really a saison, but the
sure.
saison DuPont is." So it's like, yeah, that's my thing. Is like when I don't, I'm trying to from what I'm getting is I should probably download that app if I really want to understand if I'm drinking a beer and if it's actually true to its form. Would you say
Absolutely,
that?
and even get out there and even if you're an occasional brewer, first time brewer, get out there and go find a homebrew club. Talk to these guys that have been around for a while, because you're going to get a whole variety of your traditional brewers. You're going to get your whole variety of weird brewers and everybody in between. Um, get out there, find a homebrew club, find a BJCP study group. Go judge a competition. Go to bjcp.org. There's a little competition schedule. And if you want to jump on and see how a competition is run, or even if you wanted to be a steward and just help out, that will actually get you points for if you ever decide to get certified. But get out there and learn as much as you can. Beer is a very welcoming environment, and nobody is going to give you a hard time if you want to come learn. If anybody out there needs help finding a competition or trying to get in touch with the right people, seriously reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to get you out there and get you started on this groovy hobby.
Awesome. So something that I want to transition into now is, especially with what's going on in the world right now with COVID-19, and how, especially when it comes to, as much as breweries are breweries, their tap rooms are basically you can consider them a restaurant in a way, or a bar. And um, and the one thing that I was kind of thinking of is, there was a thought process through mine with how COVID has affected the microbrewery scene. It's a question that I'll feed to you, but just one thought of mine that I've been thinking about is, do you think that actually that craft breweries and microbreweries today have actually maybe benefited from COVID-19 in a way, because um, they haven't had to deal with having the tap room open. They've had more time to maybe do R&D to create more unique beers. I personally think that it could have been, there's actually some good that could have come out of it in that way, where it's like they don't have to deal with serving people and creating so much on top. They can do more R&D. Um, Basically, what do you think has been the greatest effect that COVID has had on the craft beer scene, and what have been the negatives, also, as well as, has there been any positives have you seen?
So down here, there's several taproom only places. COVID has basically all but shut those guys down. There's a particular brewery that's very popular in Louisiana. It makes kind of a hot beer, if you will, that people go nuts over. And I was talking to the head brewer not long ago once all of this kicked off, and he said, "Oh yeah, man, we're down only 30%. Thank God, because it could be a whole lot worse. To be down 30% and still consider yourself lucky, that's kind of wild." There's a particular hot brewery that opened up not long ago. People loved it. They were packed, but they were, for all intents and purposes, tap room only. They weren't distributing. So all of their sales came from, hey, let's go hang out, any given night of the week and, go have several beers. That killed that. They just shut down. Barely made it a year before they had to kill it. How does it affect the bigger guys? I really don't think it. I don't really think it does, based on their distribution. Abita, for example, at one point was the 14th largest commercial brewery in the U.S. They're about 15 minutes up the road. I'm sure things are pretty much business as usual. Their tap sales probably fell off, of course, because they're not selling at bars, but restaurants down here in Louisiana are still open. They're still selling to grocery stores and bottle shops, package stores. But as far as them, but then again, their tap room is slim to none of their budget. But I think I know for these taproom only guys, our governor basically shut that down because they have a bar license. Basically, it's a manufacturer's, but without getting into it, it's a bar.
Yeah.
It pretty much killed their business.
So, do you think then going on into the future, do you think that the craft beer scene is going to go push away from just like tap rooms and do more like, because down here, like something that me and my dad have been getting into and is going for can releases for different breweries around here. Do you think that can releases are now going to become the next big thing? Or I'm sure that they are probably the big thing. They are still a big thing, but
so in Louisiana we're a little weird. I'm not sure how it goes out there by y'all, but part of the 3-tier system. If you're familiar with that, several of the folks probably are. Basically, in Louisiana, you either have to go through a distributor or have a manufacturer's on-premise bar license, essentially. There's no in between. You can't self-distribute or you can't do anything along those lines. A lot of brewers and breweries feel that the 3-tier system is very monopolistic, and a lot of them shy away from that for that reason, because you're very tightly bound. You can't leave that distributor. You have to go through them. The profit margins become much, much, much slimmer. Hey, before COVID, before this wackiness kind of came out of nowhere thing happened, that was the thing to do. Have a tap room. You're good. You can do your own thing. You make whatever you want, whenever you want. Profit's great. People are hanging out. It's cool. Then bam, COVID happens, and your tap rooms are shut down.
So the tap rooms, because I know like the big thing here is like you go to your local tap room, and say you like a beer and you want to bring it home, you can either pick up a crowler or a growler. Do they not? So they don't actually allow that?
So you can still do, you're correct. You can still do quote unquote curbside.
Yeah.
That barely pays the bills. Frankly, that, there's nothing like having a crowded full, weekend and weekend night, and then several during the week versus a couple of cans out the door here and there. A few folks are making it, but a lot of people are taking the hit. It does not. I would say it does not equate to actually being open.
Yeah, because like that's one thing. It's I kind of see how like the craft beer scene, because I'm also a big musician. Like I play 5 instruments. Like I love music, but I see how kind of like the craft beer industry and the music industry kind of are similar in a way, where a restaurant, they can kind of do takeout, and now they have Grubhub and all these Postmates or whatever. But when it comes to beer, it's like I feel like beer, as much as it is about the flavor and is about the beer itself, it's about the scene around it.
It's the social aspect, 100%.
And I feel sad because I'm now falling in love with this whole the art form
Right.
and reading about the scene, and it sucks that I can't now actually see it, and
Sure.
I just feel like I just I just don't. Do you have any idea, like, what do you think will change? Do you think that 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 the craft beer scene, because the craft beer scene, like what I was reading, has been blowing up over the past like 5 years. Like,
And it really has. The last, when I first started being legal enough to drink craft beer, it was there, but it has definitely exponentially grown over the last 5 to 8 years. But I mean, am I worried about it? Not really. Is beer here to stay? Absolutely. Beer is one of the oldest drinks known to man, probably next to mead. And I really don't think that beer is going anywhere in its over 2,000-year-old history. This is just a drop in the bucket. So they say this too shall pass, and we'll be back to normal. Maybe it might take a little bit, but we'll get back to normal eventually and carry on as usual.
perfect. So the last question I kind of want to ask you, before we go into the most fun part about this interview, the tasting, is going to be it's actually two questions. One question is, who in the beer world do you kind of look up to? And then the final question is, what advice do you give someone who is getting really interested in beer and is constantly trying to learn more? What advice do you give them? Like, what direction should they keep on going in? Should they try to go work at a local craft brewery? Should they keep on homebrewing? What advice do you have for them?
Wow. Who do I look up to in the beer scene, in the beer world? God, he's no longer here. I would say Michael Jackson. Not of music fame. Michael Jackson of beer fame. The original beer hunter. Look for him. Google him. You can find his videos on YouTube. Incredible man. He arguably brought beer to the world through his PBS program called The Beer Hunter. Wrote many books. Actually wrote many books about whiskey as well. He has not actually. One of my my greatest pieces of beer treasure is a signed Michael Jackson poster that I have. Not to me personally. It's really cool to kind of have that. But Michael Jackson is one of the guys in the last 30 years that really kind of changed beer. Made the greatest impact to beer as we know it. What would I say to guys looking to get into this? I think I already touched on it. Get out there, get on the BJCP app, learn to homebrew, find those clubs, drink beer, try to think about what you're tasting and experiencing. A lot of people become professional brewers as a home brewer. That's where a large majority of the pool comes from. So whether you want to dedicate yourself to this as a serious hobby, or as I call it, a professional hobby, because that's what it is for me. It's a professional hobby. So a serious hobby, professional hobby, or eventually get into an actual job, get into homebrew, learn things, read, drink. Yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. So let's now get into, we did all the talking. Let's now do all the drinking.
Yeah.
So if you want to give a little description on exactly what we're trying, and kind of go through how a grandmaster judge goes through a tasting.
Sure. So the beer that we have is a beer that we both could find at our respective local bottle shops, called the Duchess de Bourgogne. It is a Flanders red style beer. These particular beers are very interesting, very complex. They're malty, they're fruity. It's a little bit sour, and they're considered one of the more wine-like beers. In fact, Michael Jackson that we talked about before has an episode and calls this basically the beer of Burgundy because it's referring to its wine-like complexity and nuances. So let's pour it. And you've never had this before, have you? Or you never had this style before?
I've never had this beer nor this style.
Well, I think you're in for a treat.
So let's, like you said, let's go through, especially for this beer, type of proper glassware, how should you pour it, serving temp stuff, all that.
So let me bring this down just a little bit. So for this particular style, you're going to want something, a wine glass would not be wrong, but something like a goblet or a snifter style, because you want to bring those complexities up to your nose so you can really catch those aromas. Of course, the vast majority of taste is smell. As you know, if you pinch your nose and you take a swallow of anything, it doesn't taste anywhere as rich or as deep or as complex as it normally would. So you want a nice glass to bring those complexities, those aromas to the nose for you to enjoy. So something like this is perfect for this kind of beer. There is beer glassware geared towards particular styles. I think those things do work and they do make a better experience overall. So how do you pour this beer? The way I like to pour beer is I like to pour it down the side first. And as we get a nice little bit in there, I'll tilt it up and get a good pour. I want to create a good head on this. And the reason for doing this is both from a valuation perspective, but also too, when you create that head, as we were just talking about, it's the aroma that helps the flavor. So this head, these little bubbles are exploding, right, creating flavor in the mouth. So there are several things that you evaluate a beer on, and we talked about this. Those criteria are appearance, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall impression. So looking at this beer, you can kind of tilt it, you can hold it up. You can see that this is almost a mahogany with ruby red highlights. It's clear clarity when held to the light, however, though it's slightly opaque just purely due to the color. We have a off-tan head or off-white light tan head that is fairly sustained, consisting of small bubbles. As it dissipates, it leaves a nice ring around the glass. This is going to be actually proper for this style beer. So this would get, 6 points, 6 out of 6 here, because it hits all of those proper things for this style. So if we smell this beer, we're going to hold it up to the nose. You have a couple of options. You can do some nice long inhales, or you can also do some shorter inhales. In this particular beer, what I like to do sometimes is if I'm judging, I will usually put something over, a little coaster or whatever. I'll actually put it over here because it allows those more volatile aromas to not dissipate. So I'll usually judge the appearance while letting those volatile aromas kind of build up under here. So we'll just swirl it a little bit to kind of activate it and let that.
So you should swirl it kind of like swirling a wine.
Yeah. Because again, you kind of want to just kick it up just a little bit to create more aroma in there from that CO2 escaping. So in this particular beer, so this has a really lovely dark cherry, plum, dark stone fruit, those stony fruits like that. We also get a little bit of acetic, wine-like character.
I'm getting like a little bit of like Coca-Cola type of smell in a way.
Yeah, buy it. Yep. So you're getting also to a little bit of, there is a little bit of a vanilla note to it. That's going to come from the barrel being aged in barrels. Those are called lactones. That's what gives those kind of woody notes, or those barrel notes that we talked about, marshmallows or vanilla or sometimes maple. So the sourness is nice. We don't get any kind of hop aroma. We don't get our fermentation character is that sourness. So really, we've got a nice acetic note up front of moderate low intensity with moderate, which is behind moderate cherry plum with low barrel lactones of vanilla. Is how I would describe this. It's balanced. Nothing really overly kicks you in the face. Of course, the vinegar, the acetic is a little bit higher.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing that I kept on, that I'm noticing a lot. Like I don't know how to say this in a not like kind of off,
No, go ahead, man.
but it kind of like when you sometimes kind of has that acidic smell that you kind of have like the throat kind of has. And I don't know why I'm getting that smell, but it kind of smells like that, like spoiled acidic smell in a way. Not like spoiled in a bad way, but you know what I mean?
Well, it is vinegar.
Okay.
It is vinegar, acetobacter. Actually, we talked about wood being kind of a harbor for bacteria, not a bad term in this style beer. But the barrels that they use are wooden, and they do harbor that acetobacteria and various wild yeasts to really create the depth and complexity of this beer. So aroma, I'd say that's about right. Out of 12, I would give this probably about a 10 out of 12. It's nice. Maybe it could be a little bit more complex, but it kind of hits the nail on the head for the style. Yeah, maybe a little bit too acidic, but and which may take over some complexity in it of the malt. But that's kind of the only thing I would knock it on.
Okay.
So flavor. All right. Have you tasted this yet?
I have not. I've been waiting.
All right, try that. Tell me what you think.
That's whoa.
That's kind of cool, yeah.
Because it's like the look of it doesn't. Every sour that I've had has never looked this colored.
Mm-hmm.
So the look of it, like I'm thinking more of like, I don't want to say like, because it's dark, it looks kind of, it doesn't look like a thick, like stouty type of, but like, it just doesn't look like it's going to taste sour. And even with the smell, like there's still notes where I wouldn't consider it a sour, but right, let me go in for the flavor one more time.
Yep. So interesting while you're thinking about that. In this particular style, there's a lot of German malts because again, Belgium is very close to Germany. There's a lot of German malts, Vienna Munich, Cara malts, Special B, that kind of thing in this particular style. So that's actually what gives this color. There's actually darker German malts. It can be fermented with normal beer yeast, Saccharomyces, Lactobacillus, Brettanomyces, but yeah. So it's actually the malts used that give it this color.
The number one, like it just straight up tastes like fizzy sour cherry juice, like a sour cherry candy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it tastes like.
So all right, let's talk about the flavor of this beer.
Also, how are you tasting it? Like, are you swirling it in your mouth type of thing?
You let it, so when you sip, you let it coat over the entire tongue.
Okay.
Also, you can get some secondary flavors. So when you take a sip, you inhale because that introduces more oxygen in, and you'll get some other flavors. Your just normal sip flavors. Take an inhale in, and you'll actually see that you'll get a little spike in flavor towards the back. So if you sip, close mouth, you breathe out, you can actually kind of taste it a little bit more. It increases that intensity. Just let it coat the entire mouth, the entire tongue. So in this particular beer, you actually are looking for several things. You are looking for hop bitterness, hop flavor, malt sweetness, malt flavor. You are looking for fermentation character. You're looking for balance, and you're looking for finish. That's the things that you're looking for in here. So to describe this particular beer, excuse me, describe this particular beer. This is a moderately high sweet beer with malt flavors of toast, and again, as you noted, those dark cherries. No hop flavor, no hop bitterness. However, the beer is balanced off by which starts out as low, but eventually builds up to a moderate or medium acetic sourness. This beer is balanced towards the malt, obviously, but again, it's really balanced out by that acid. On the finish, there is a touch of tannin from that wood use, and as the beer is known for, as in the finish, it kind of reminds you of a wine with those dark stone fruits and that tannic quality finish.
Very much like it tastes like one of those the type of wines right now that are really big, like I forgot what they're called, but they're like like natural wines. It has a very natural wine taste.
Yep. Yeah, with that little bit of funk in it. Absolutely. So on the BJCP score sheet, flavor is a 20. This is going to be probably approximately I would probably give this I'd probably roll with about an 18 out of 20. Acidic's a little interesting. A little bit more malt complexity would be nice, but you're just getting really nitpicky. This is considered one of the premier examples of the style. This is kind of one of those quintessential Flanders Reds. So it's hard to really not score this great because it really hits the nail on the. When the guidelines were written, it was basically written for this beer and a couple other beers that are very similar to this. Saint Roqueben is the other kind of premier example of the style that I can think of. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, and Rodenbach. Rodenbach was the other Flanders Red. That's kind of the premier of this. So it's hard to really knock this beer. But all right. So mouthfeel. The criteria that's judged for mouthfeel. You're going for body, carbonation, alcohol warmth, creaminess, and tannins. Or tannic quality.
Does this happen a lot when you do a bunch of beer tastings?
Well, we're actually about to discuss that in a second.
Okay.
So This is a medium thin body beer with medium high carbonation. Mine's actually pretty carbonated, so hence I'm burping a whole lot. Um, and it's got low to medium. I'd say it's about low astringency towards the back. You can kind of feel it on the side of the tongue, and it appears to be aided a little bit. That sensation aided by the acidity in this beer.
Like that kind of like that like you get like when you eat like a sharp cheddar cheese. People say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Feeling. Like, and like the mouth kind of constricting when you drink it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to discuss and talk about here. But a little bit of tannin, kind of also aided by that acidity that gives you that sensation on the side of the mouth. Again, proper mouthfeel is generally a 5. This is a 5 out of 5.
For this style.
For this style, yeah, for this particular style, say about it's 5 out of 5. Overall impressions of this beer, it's a lovely complex. It's a world-class example of the style. I don't think we got below 45 points out of 50. This is a world-class example of the style. I would probably give this overall impressions a 9 out of 10. World-class example of the style. The acetic note comes through a little too much and takes away from malt complexity. Still, however, is lovely, drinkable, complex, exactly what this particular style calls for. That's basically the quick version of how to evaluate a beer. If this was a BJCP competition, I would have an actual score sheet where I write all of these things down, as well as, write the scores down, give the feedback to the brewer, the entrant, and that's it. So what's your thoughts?
Like I was saying before, the beer that I've like grown up on / I've brewed 3 out of the 4 home brews that I've done have all been like IPAs. So, and my dad personally hates sours, so I've never really experienced sours before in my life. So that's why I'm kind of pushing towards that side, because I'm trying to expand my taste buds. So I would say, compared to the Petrus that I had,
Sure.
I like this a hell of a lot more than the Petrus.
Sure.
And I personally, I love that whole like constricting of the mouth feel. And I've been looking for like a sour beer that has like that fruit sourness, because there's been a lot of sour beers that I've had, but it's not like a fruit sour. It's just sour, but then also the sourness turns into like bitterness. And it's not something that I dislike, but I like how this one is just sour. Like, there's difference between sour and bitter, of course. Like, you would agree with that? And yes. I like how this is just sour. Like, I've always been like the give me the Warhead sour candy type of kid, and I personally I love this beer.
Good. You found a great new style to play with and to explore. They're kind of rare. You really don't see them brewed by a lot of local breweries. All of your stuff is going to come out of Flanders area, Belgium, that neck of the woods. So,
is this a wild yeast beer?
No, it's not wild like a lambic, but it's more. It does use Brettanomyces and some other stuff. It's more of a controlled wild beer, as opposed to cool ship and just kind of let whatever blow through it. These are generally pretty controlled as far as their yeast, because they want to retain that particular character. Still malt, but with enough supporting, balancing acetic note, with a certain attenuation, a certain dryness, certain esters that are produced. It's wild in that it uses something other than traditional straight Saccharomyces.
I'll say this. I think the reason why I like this beer as well so much is because it reminds me of my favorite beer experience that I ever had, which was in March, literally right before lockdown. I was supposed to be studying abroad in Europe during it, and I decided to go for a 2-week trip before my trip before my program even started, and I went to go to see my friend in Copenhagen who was staying there, and we went to this one bar that had a blueberry cantillon or cantillon.
Yeah, Cantillon. Yeah,
Cantillon,
absolutely.
and
Love
and that bar is the only place in the world where you can have that blueberry cantillon. And it was hilarious. I actually walked into that bar and I was like, a friend of mine, a friend of like a family friend of ours was like, go to this beer bar and you have to try Cantillon. I forgot about it. So we went there and I got like a hazy IPA, like the dumb American I am. I go for the hazy IPA. And then I read the text and I was like, oh, like I should go get Cantillon. And the guy working the bar is like this really hipster, like beer guy. And I was like, oh, can I get a glass of Cantillon? And the guy just looked at me like, psh, you want a glass of Cantillon? Because I didn't understand that you had to buy it by the bottle. And I was like,
sure.
oh, just give me your best Cantillon. And he was like,
Make the whole bottle then.
and he was like, oh, so you want the $300 Cantillon? So I got the 2019 Blueberry Cantillon, and it was the most amazing, magical experiences of my life. And this is the closest resemblance to that beer I've ever had. So
yeah, same neck of the woods, basically. Actually, you said who was the one that I was kind of starstruck with. Actually, my beer guy I wish I could meet is Jean Van Roy, Cantillon. On my beer bucket is to go to Cantillon. So yeah, I'm a big Cantillon fan, actually.
that
Love those guys.
I said, because so my study abroad trip got canceled like literally a week before it started. So so I told myself is now that I've fallen in love with beer, once I graduate, I'm gonna go to Europe and just tour Europe and go to all the major breweries in Europe until I'm broke, and then come back to America and figure out my life. So I gotta go to a real Trappist. I've also told people like the day after like I brewed my first homebrew, I said, yeah, I'm gonna go to a monastery in Belgium for 5 years and just learn how to brew beer. That's what I'm gonna do after I graduate. But yeah, is there anything that you would like to say? Is there anything that maybe I've said that you want to correct me on throughout this?
No, no, this has been great. This has been fun. It's great. Thank you for having me. Anybody watching, anybody thinking about getting beer brewing, just get out there and do it, man. You can get really nerdy. You can get really deep into it, but you're the coolest nerdy kid at the party. Because you got friends. I've got friends that hit me up regularly. Hey man, what beer should I get? Or even Nick, of course, my brother Nick, and he'll take a picture of the menu and he'll be like, hey man, what beer should I get? And I get that a good bit. And that's kind of cool. It's both fun and it's both humbling. But get out there and learn it. With that being said, man, when it comes down to it, it's just beer. The best beer you're going to drink is the beer in front of you. Every beer has a place, and don't overanalyze every beer you drink. There's a time and a place for being in that judge mindset, it's fun. Just like I said, it's just beer. Lay back, have fun, drink good beer, hang out with good people, and that's it, man. Get out there and enjoy it.
Just beer. I think that's the best way to end this. So I just want to say once again, thank you so much. There's any, if I'll have any questions,
follow up.
Yeah. So thank you for everybody that has watched. This has been an amazing experience, amazing first interview podcast, you would say, type of thing that I've done. So thank you all for watching this with me. And Sal, thank you so much for being here.
Cheers.
Cheers.